Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Real TC's opinion on the Abrams X. We're comparing it to the M1A1 and M1A2. First issue I have with it is the crew is in the hull. They tested this back in the 80s with the M1 tank testbed, and back then they had poor situational awareness. That still applies today, in my opinion, because if they just have screens inside, you can only look at one screen at a time. You don't have any peripheral vision when you're looking at screens. If they have the iron vision, which I believe the Israelis came up with, it provides a fantastic solution to the limited visibility when the crew is buttoned up. However, if the cameras get destroyed or damaged, or they break, you go back to the Mark I eyeball. And that's where another issue that I have with the crew being in the hull. It is always best to have the tank commander have his head outside the hatch. In Michael Whitman Volume 1 book, it was mentioned several times in there to where a lot of the really good tank commanders back in the 40s, and still applies to this day in my opinion, is to have their head out of the hatch. Even though you might have the best periscope setup in the world, you can only look at one periscope at a time, or one screen at a time. So you lose your peripheral vision when you do that. And when you lose peripheral vision, you can't notice a target off to your right or off to your left. You can only see straight ahead pretty much out of that one periscope. Another thing on there's several things on the unmanned turret. The XM360 120 or 120 millimeter main gun. It's lighter, but does have the same durability. The autoloader. No, that's just a hard no. If the rounds are able to be manually loaded, and I would say the 120 that the M1 has is at the physical limits of the human body. Because service sable is 50 pounds or 22 kilos. Service impat is about the same. And that 50 pounds having to pull it out of the ready rack and throw it in the gun in under 6 seconds, that gets very tiring and it wears people out. And the only time I would say an autoloader is necessary is when you're shooting rounds that are physically impossible for a human to load. The Rheinmetall 130 millimeter, the M1A1 Thumper with its 140, those rounds are just too big. You can't physically load them. But the problem with going to those bigger rounds is now you reduce the ammo capacity for main gun rounds. The M1A1 Thumper only carried, I believe, 32, 34 rounds in its ready rack, which isn't that great. During World War II, the Ordnance Board would not accept the M26 Pershing to go overseas since it did not carry 70 main gun rounds. So they had to redesign it to carry 70 main gun rounds because their concern was it would run out of ammo. It still applies to today because the M1A1 and M1A2 only carry 42 main gun rounds on the tank, which you can burn through really fast. The hybrid electric drive. Great idea if it works. However, there's a few problems that I have with it. Number one, you get rid of the turbine. Now you might be giving your position away because diesels are a lot louder than turbine engines. An M1, if it's coming straight at you, and it's not turning or anything, and it's creeping along at about 15 kilometers an hour, you won't hear it until it gets within 100 meters of you. Like, you physically will not hear that tank. The other part, it's just crew benefit. Standing behind that tank when it's, I'd say, below 15 degrees Celsius or below 50 degrees outside is so nice. You get all nice and warm, and then also you can dry off all your wet gear. The 50% reduction in fuel consumption is great, again, if it works. There's nothing wrong with that. I just don't think it's the way to go. Now, comparison to the M1A1. I don't think the Abrams X will be as reliable as even the M1A2, and it won't even come close to the M1A1. All the NCOs and people that I have met that have been on the M1A1, whether in training or they use it in combat, they worship the ground that the tank drives on. The M1A1's like Randy from South Park. The I didn't hear no bell. That is literally how the M1A1 is. The M1A1 is the easiest to maintain, hardest to use due to no hunter-killer capabilities. And hunter-killer capability is the gunner finds their target, and the tank commander is using the CITV to find another target so they can come up. The gunner kills the first target, they can come back down, and the gunner doesn't have to scan for targets. The TC just designates them on, and then they can kill that next target, whether it be troops, tank, PCs, helicopters, what have you. But the only problem with the M1A1 is you could have 10 M1A1 crews and 10 M1A2 crews. And I would say the top 2 M1A1 crews would be able to compete with the top 5 M1A2 crews, just because that hunter-killer system, it makes it so much easier to find targets. In addition, with the M1A2, you have auto lead, so you don't have to track, laze, and shoot like on the M1A1. On the A2, you just track it. You'll still laze it, but the tank does all of the leading for you. You don't do any of that. And also the CITV, again with the hunter killer, that really does make a difference. Another nice thing about the A2, it has air conditioning. When it works, it actually makes it relatively nice inside. It can be 40 degrees outside, Celsius, and you close all the hatches, you turn on the AC, and I'd say it brings it to relatively comfortable. And it's not perfect, because nothing really ever is, but it does work. But the problem with the A2, if the crew doesn't stay on top of maintenance, it just breaks and continues to break, and you have a whole bunch of issues, a whole bunch of problems. But as long as they stay on top of maintenance, it'll beat the M1A1 in gunnery. Maybe not long-term reliability, just because there's so many electrical components, but it will beat it in going. The M1A2 is a more accurate system, fire control system. It's just that much better. The APU on the SEP3, if it works, is significantly better than the APU on the M1A1. And the reason why is the APU on the M1A1 is designed to be a battery maintainer, and that's it. The APU on the SEP3 is designed to actually charge the batteries, so it's a lot more powerful of an APU. Again, if it works. So, in conclusion, with the Abrams X, it's a great technology demonstrator, and that's about it. I would not consider it anything worthwhile for any military to buy. There's too much there's too many electronics on it. You have poor situational awareness if any of those electronics die. And the unmanned turret, I don't think that's a good way to go. Thanks for watching.